This is the Joe Watson Show podcast, Northern Ireland's smallest podcast.
It is indeed, folks. What about you? Hope you're well. Welcome along to the podcast this week. Well, I have a bit of bad news for you. Initially had planned for Sammy and myself to come on and do a wee bit of blethering and a wee bit of your man and me and just chat about everything and anything, but Sammy had other plans this week, and sadly we had planned to meet a few times, but things cropped up and it'll happen eventually. So this week it's just me blethering, and I just wanted to talk about a few things. Also this week, yes, I want to talk about last week's episode. Wow, it was fantastic having Ali on, and what feedback I've got from the first episode with Ali. We talked about Hocus Pocus 1 and 2, and you know something, it was just refreshing to have this sort of feature on the podcast, and it's really good to have someone brand new with new ideas. Not saying anybody that's been on the podcast are not having great ideas, but the fact that we have this new segment that comes every fortnight, it's good because it's just brilliant. And Ali does a brilliant job, and I don't know how Ali has time for life and time for this, that, and the other that he does, reviewing things on the TV, on Netflix, and things like that. And I'll touch a wee bit on TV later on, because that's all part of what I'm going to be talking about this week. This week's episode, as I said, is just me. Please, if you do anything, make sure you tune in next week, because we have an amazing episode with Ali again. Ali's coming on, and he's going to talk about what's coming up on Halloween on all the streaming services. And you cannot miss it. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm looking forward to hearing your response from it all. So what happened this week? Well, this week the BBC turned 100. I did. And I just want to talk about some of the things that I watched growing up on BBC. And initially, I need to start off with the children's TV shows that I watched growing up on. Specifically, I want to just sort of concentrate on BBC programmes, because there's no point in me going to ITV programmes, because this is all about the BBC. So I'm going to just talk about things that I watched as a child and things that I loved about them. So coming up here, we have Cat's Eyes. I think I do remember this here. There's two cats there. I'm not 100% sure if I remember it, but I just double check what it was about. Cat's Eyes, also spelled as Cat's Eyes with an apostrophe S, was an educational programme which was part of the BBC school programming airing in the BBC on CBBC time slot. I probably did, see that. Another one is The Queen's Nose. Obviously, I think anybody that grew up in the 90s or maybe in the 80s would remember The Queen's Nose. A wee girl had this 50p pence, and every time she rubbed on the Queen's nose, interesting things happened. And a bit like Bernard's Watch, but I don't know if Bernard's Watch was actually on the BBC. It could have been on CITV, but I can't remember. But basically, why am I still looking at Cat's Eyes? I'm looking for The Queen's Nose. 50p pence, which still to this day displays her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who sadly passed away last month in September, on my wedding anniversary, by the way. The 50p pences have her face on them and her nose. So The Queen's Nose was a CBBC television adaptation of Dick King Smith's novel. I do apologise, but there was a pop-up came up there. The series was broadcast during the CBB slot between 1995 and 2003, and it's about a wee girl called Harmony Parker, who has a magical 50p coin, and it grants her wishes every time she rubs the nose on the face of the Queen. So it was alright, it was okay. Live and Kicking was another one. Every Saturday you would have watched Live and Kicking. Loved it. And another one I loved was 50-50. Do you remember that there? There was a blue team and a yellow team, and it was usually made up of schools or something, and it was fun. It was really fun. Get Your Own Back was another one with Dave Benson Phillips, and I loved the bit at the end where they got their own back on the teacher or their dad or their mum or their uncle. or a friend or whatever, a big sister or a big brother. It was usually an adult they got their own back on. And I think the teachers were fair play to them. Like, you know, they took time out of their busy schedule to come and be laughed at, basically. And they were gunked into gunk. And I think Dave Benson Phillips, he made it sort of that it was going to edge towards the wean or the child winning the thing, so they were dunked into the slime. It was brilliant. It was brilliant. So I loved that. What other things are on here that I remember? Mr. Ben. Loved that. Mr. Ben and the little thing at the start where he used to go round and round and he used to pick a hat. And he picked a different costume and he went around and he did different things. He went to places and it was very good. Arthur. Loved Arthur. I even loved Arthur when I was in high school. Arthur was an aardvark and he lived with his family. And he had a friend named Buster. Buster was a white rabbit. I loved them. Funny story is how I remember why I admit to watching it in secondary school was because I remember somebody asked me, "What are you watching in the evening whenever you come home from school?" And I said Arthur, like a fool, because I thought, that's a children's program. You're watching a children's program. I didn't go to school in Belfast, by the way, but and I was like, oh dear. But no, somebody says, I watched that too. It's a great show, you know. So yeah, loved Arthur. Noah's Island. Now this is one that not a lot of people remember. Now Noah, I'm not going to play. I would love to play the theme tune, but I can't because you'd be done. But Noah's Island. I loved Noah's Island. Noah's Island was an animated TV series made by the creators of The Animals of Farthing Wood. That was another one I think I watched. It was ran on BBC from the 29th of September 1997 to the 21st of December 1999. So it only lasted 2 years. That's maybe why people didn't watch it. And each episode were about 39 minutes, but they ran for about 28 minutes. So there was always a couple of minutes cut. I loved it. It was a group of animals that got shipwrecked, and they went to this island, and they made the polar bear Noah the island leader. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I was definitely up there as one of my favourites. So what's next on the list? Let me see if I see anybody else. Newsround. I think everybody watched Newsround. John Craven's. I'm too young to remember John Craven doing it, but John Craven's Newsround. They've had Newsround and Liesl Mazimba. Is it Mazimba? He's still on the BBC, and yeah. Other things. BBC Children in Need. We're coming away from children's programming. Children in Need. It's been going for forever. You know, there's always been an episode of Children in Need. I think it's coming up very soon. I do believe it's coming up very, very, very soon. I don't like the current Pudsey. I'll put that out there. I prefer the old Pudsey with the red and white dot scarf on his eye. Not this current multicoloured one, but hey, you know. But Children in Need, well, I must just doubly check when BBC Children in Need is actually out. When does it actually happen? But love BBC Children in Need. Always love the wee Northern Irish bits. But I love Children in Need and Pudsey Bear. That's who he is. Pudsey Bear. When is Children in Need? Is it November? It's been going since 1980. You know, it's been going forever. But it's usually November. It's usually out in November. So it's usually on after Halloween. Probably, I think it's the Saturday after Halloween. Or something like that, you know. But moving on, what else has there been on BBC? Blue Peter. Everybody loved Blue Peter. Blue Peter, this is something I did earlier, made earlier. Loved it. Who do I remember? Yvette Fielding. I remember Connie Huck. I remember Zoe Salmon. I remember Matt Baker. Matt Baker's actually still on our TV. He does Country File here in the UK. So I love Blue Peter. Bob the Builder didn't really take on to him. Pingu. Loved Pingu, the little penguin. Always getting into bother. Meep, meep. Pinky and the Brain. I love Pinky and the Brain. If you don't remember Pinky and the Brain, there's Pinky and the Brain. There's Pinky and the Brain. One is a genius, the other's insane. Pinky, the brain always wanted to take over the world, but Pinky always destroyed it for him. Loved it. Another one from my younger days is Play Days. It started off with a roundabout, like it's a bus and a roundabout, but it's not the magic roundabout. People always get it mixed up with Play Days. I love Play Days. It started off a bus, and there was always a way in from Birmingham, and where will it go? You know, what's inside of the lollipop? I think that's what it is. Love Play Days. Another one on the list is Postman Pat. Everybody knows who Postman Pat is. Postman Pat and his black and white cat. So, Baker Grove, and I wasn't old enough to watch Baker Grove, but I do remember bits of it, and that's probably where we got Ant and Dec. That's where we did get Ant and Dec from. What else have we on here? The list. Rugrats. Loved Rugrats. Around the Twist. It was set in Australia. Loved that. Have you ever felt like this? Loved it. Chucklevision, obviously Chucklevision. Who did not love Chucklevision? And Paul and Barry. I loved Barry. Was my favourite. To me, to you, to me, to you. Loved Chucklevision. Did. Loved it. Scooby-Doo was on multiple channels. It was on there too. S-Mart was another one. Smart Art, basically. And there was a guy on there with blonde hair. If I remember his name, was it Matt or Mark? Might have been Mark. Sadly, he took his own life there a number of years ago. But loved Smart Art. I loved it. Other ones, Come Outside. Obviously, Linda Byron. And another one, Linda Byron, should I say. Auntie Mabel and Pippin. Oh, loved them. Look up, look down, look all around. Up in the air and all around. Loved her. Loved the adventures and the wee spotty plane. I am really loving this. I'm actually reliving some of my childhood. Snorks, the Smurfs as well. Or was Smurfs somewhere else? Smurfs might have been ITV or Channel 4. I can't remember. But I know the Snorks. I'm not going to get into too much details about the Snorks. Fireman Sam. Loved Fireman Sam. Tasmania was another one. Loved him. These are things you can look up online if you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not explaining them very well up to not, but no, these are some of my favourite programmes on BBC. Obviously, some older people will love EastEnders. I'm not big keen on it anymore. Used to watch the soap operas, now I don't bother at all. Goosebumps was another one. Grange Hill. What else? Different things. What else is on here? The Powerpuff Girls. Didn't watch that. Didn't. I actually didn't. Jack and Ori. Everybody knows about Jack and Ori. I think Jack and Ori is still actually on the go, or it was. I think they're talking about it. Yes, it is on the go, and I think, is it Tom Brady? Is Tom Brady now presenting it? Something tells me Tom Brady's presenting it. I could be wrong. Did I miss somebody? Gordon the Gopher, was he on there? No, maybe he wasn't. Who else? There's so many other different. Hanna-Barbera, the Smurfs were on BBC. I was right. I loved the Smurf. Papa Smurf was always my favourite. What else? The Tweenies. Tweenies were a bit like, how would you describe the Tweenies? They're a bit more animated. They're a bit more human-like than the Teletubbies, who I think were actually on BBC as well. The Teletubbies, if I'm right. Tom and Jerry. Loved Tom and Jerry. That was it. Tom and Jerry's another one. Everybody knows Tom and Jerry. I think Tom and Jerry are actually a worldwide thing. Wallace and Gromit. I love Wallace and Gromit. What can I say about it? Brilliant show. And another one, speaking of Wallace and Gromit, Peter Sellis, the original voice of Wallace, he actually was in Last of the Summer Wine, which ran for decades on BBC. Loved what Last Summer Wine. Still watch it on other TV channels. So, BBC's been around for 100 years this week. And what 100 years it's been. And, just looking at the timeline here on the website, you have the invention of the radio. You have, different things. I think Tony Hancock's Half Hour was on the BBC radio to begin with. Doctor Who. Wow. My favourite Doctor Who of all time is David Tennant. I'm sorry. Some of you might say Tom Baker. Some of you might say William Hartnell. Some of you may say Matt Smith. It's David Tennant. End of story. What else is on the time? Mortimer and Wise. Love them boys. I love watching them now because I was too young. They weren't about whenever I was born. But I love watching them now. They're very, very funny. Swap Shop. Noel Edmonds. I don't remember it, but I know of it. What else? Ab Fab, if you're not familiar with Ab's Absolutely Fabulous. We have the Teletubbies. We have The Office. One of the biggest sitcoms ever to be made. Ricky Gervais. There's an American version as well. The Office. I was never a big fan of The Office, but I can't talk about the BBC without mentioning The Office. Strictly Come Dancing is another one that's in there. The Generation Game. Love the Generation Game. Brucey and all those guys. Not forgetting Only Fools and Horses. Did I say Blue Peter? I said Blue Peter. Some of the faces from the BBC days. I don't remember any of those really. Know any of those faces really. But Lenny Henry, one of the nation's finest comedians. Graham Norton's another one. Who's that woman? She used to read the news. This is not working out, isn't it? No, this episode's not great, is it? No. Reveal the faces. Here we go. We'll tell you now who the black lady is, because I used to love her on the news. I thought she had a great voice. What do you call your man? Blackadder. Rowan Atkinson started off Blackadder. I think it was in BBC Two as well. Another great episode, another great sitcom. You cannot mention the BBC without mentioning Blackadder. Loads of other different things on there. Steve Coogan, I think, started off on the BBC. Harry Corbett and Sooty started off on the BBC, but then did they not move to CATV whenever Matthew took over? Sooty and Co. I think they might have been CBBC to begin with, and then they went, or Children's BBC, and then they went to CATV afterwards. But Michael Fish, the famous newsreader who mentioned he predicted a storm, that said, it'll not come, and sadly people lost their lives. Sir Bruce Forsyth, big BBC presenter. David Frost, you probably remember him. There's loads of other different people on there. I'm trying to find out who this newsreader was that I just loved, because I loved her voice. She had a very notorious voice, but I can't remember her name. Moira Stewart, that's who I'm talking about. Moira Stewart did the news for a lifetime on BBC. Sir Terry Wogan. I'll just leave it there. Sir Terry Wogan. What a radio legend he was. And he's missed. He's definitely missed. So that's a wee roundup of the BBC and what I remember of it, and different things. So I'll cover another story and then I'll have to say bye-bye, because I promised the wife we're going out to Amelia's birthday party this evening. So I should have this done a few days ago, but as I say, Sammy we kept planning a meeting, and sadly something took him up his time. So I'll have Sammy on eventually, but it's great to have Ali on to fill it, not to fill in, that's the wrong words, but to have something that's constant on the pod that you guys can listen to, because there is going to be weeks where it's just me and podcasting, but actually it is boring. I have to admit, it's boring and it's just me talking. But I'm loving the fact that the pod's back on again, and I've still got that fire in me that has been lit, and I'm loving doing podcasting again. I said last week this is series 2. It doesn't matter about seasons. It doesn't matter about the season. I may take a break again, maybe 50, 80, 90 episodes down the line. Who knows? But as long as the pods keep as long as I keep churning out episodes, But anyway, so funny old month, hasn't it been? Because there's been more prime ministers and down the street and more resignations this year than there's ever been, I think. Liz Truss announced her resignation yesterday as prime minister after 45 days in office. And they're talking Boris Johnson will be back in the office. I would like to see Boris back in the office. In number 10, I actually would like to see him back in there because he was, he had a party. Yeah, he did. What he did was wrong. He admitted that. But Liz just couldn't deliver on what she had promised. And, so I think Theresa May couldn't finish what she wanted to start. Theresa May was put into a hard place at the beginning because she was given Brexit, and Brexit wasn't something she wanted to do. David Cameron pushed Brexit, So, being Prime Minister, being world leaders, it's not what it cracked up to be, really, is it? And let's face it, poor Larry the cat. Somebody said, I laughed over read it on Facebook. Larry the cat has had more owners than Jar Jar Gabor. And if you don't get that reference, I'll explain it a wee bit. Jar Jar Gabor had 9 husbands. Not saying a husband's the owner of a wife. It was just a wee joke. But she had 9 husbands in her 99 years on this planet. That's amazing. So she was married for 9 decades. I just want to make sure I'm right in that. What age did she die? She was 99 and she had 9 husbands. So she was married 9 times. So she wasn't married for 9 decades, obviously not. She was married in 1935, divorced in 1941. She was married in 1942. She was divorced in 1947. She was married in 1949. She was divorced in 54. She was married in 62. She was divorced in 65. She was married in 66 and divorced in 67. She was married in 75, divorced in 76. Married in 76, divorced in 82. Married in 83, divorced in 83. Or annulled in 83, should I say. And then she was married to their last husband there in 1986. So there's the poor cat there, Larry the cat. I think they should give Larry the job as Prime Minister. I think he would do a cracking job. I think if there's any animal in this country could do a cracking job, it's our Larry. Daisy, I don't think you could get through the doors of down the street. I really don't, daughter. But if you want to run, you put your name in there. Because I think at the minute, is it who's the only one put her name in? Is it Penny Mordaunt has put her name in, or Rishi Sunak? Someone has put their name in the running, and funny that. So Rishi Sunak was the Chancellor of the Exchequer a few years ago, and this a few months ago. But now he resigned because of Boris. And then we had Kwasi Kwarteng, and he resigned because of Liz. And now we have Jeremy Hunt. I wonder will he still be Chancellor if there is another when the new Prime Minister comes in. Just Google there, random Google search, and Google's good. Boris Johnson or Rishi Sunak touted as UK's next Prime Minister. Okay, that's interesting. We'll see who that is. Probably this time next week we'll know who it is, and been a tumultuous few weeks. What was I going to talk about after this? What was I going to talk about? That's you know me, you do know me, you know me. So yeah, I think that's what I was going to talk about. I don't know, but that's it for the week. I'll leave you a wee short one because I have to get ready. But thank you very much for listening. It's great to get the podcast back up again. And last week's episode, it's so many listeners. Whenever I moved from Anchor to Podbean, I lost a lot of listeners because the whole Spotify issue, and a lot of my listeners were on Anchor. And then when I moved to Podbean, I had to grow get new listeners, and you came and you didn't let me down. And then I took that lengthy break, and then I thought, you know what? I'm going to come on here and there's going to be nobody listening to me. But I have a good number of listeners between Podbean and YouTube and Spotify, and it's not on Google yet. I don't know why it's not on Google, but, you know, hopefully very soon, hopefully they'll fix that issue very soon. It's not on Apple Podcasts. It says it's an Apple Podcast, but it's not. I don't know what's going on. But hopefully I'll get all that ironed out very, very soon. So next week, make sure you tune in to listen to myself and Ali on the Entertainment Exchange. But yeah, so I'm going to go now. Thank you very much for listening. But before I go, here is ways to get in touch.
Remember to check out the website, joewatsonshow.com. Email the podcast@joewatsonshow.com.
All the best, take care, and bye-bye.